What's up, everybody? Metal Dave, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, bringing you another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today, we are super excited to be joined by guitarist Marty Friedman, joining us all the way from Japan. It's 10 a.m. in the morning where he is. It's 8 p.m. where we are in Texas. And he ended up spending about an hour with us. He's got a new album called Drama. It's an instrumental album. There are 2 tracks with vocals. We talk a little bit about that. Overall, though, it's an instrumental album. Gorgeous, gorgeous music. I mean, I told Marty I'm not usually a fan of instrumental albums, and I always get concerned when I hear that an accomplished guitar player is putting out an instrumental album, especially a guy that's known from his heavy metal background. I worry that it's going to be this overpowering shredder fest or whatever, and that's not at all the case with Drama, Marty's latest album. I don't know, Soundscapes is the word that comes to mind.
I like that. Yes.
Yeah.
He talks about things that he's into during this conversation we had today. And notice that he mentions pop music and soundtrack music and things like that. So him talking about that, interesting fact is Ron Jarzombek, who obviously knows Marty, was his touring guitar player for a little while. He listens to soundtrack. It was like, I can't see Ron making this super ethereal, mind trippy kind of mellow, instrumental record, because Ron doesn't really do that. Mm-hmm. But there are these aspects. We were just talking about it off camera about how similar personalities they are, actually. But yeah, that's sound bites or ethereal. I hate the term new age because it leaves this weird taste in your mouth when you say new age. But you know what I mean. You could probably lose yourself in the record a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
I think that's what he's going for.
I use soundscape, you used ethereal, and I think both of those words suit the music. I found it to be a very soothing, pleasant listening experience. And I know it might be kind of cliche to say, but there's a journey to it. It's not one song. I mean, obviously the songs start and stop, but they segue into each other nicely. It's a cohesive overall piece of music. It's like a composition. It's not an album full of tracks.
Right.
It's an entire listening experience. And he talked about that a little bit, about how he puts effort into that becoming the end result. He's very keenly aware of the fact that this might be a great song, but maybe it's a disruptor on this album, so I save it for later or whatever. He's very aware of keeping the composition consistent, I guess.
He's very aware, period.
Yeah. And you mentioned his personality, and he reminds me of Billy White, and it's funny that he reminds you of Ron. So there's 2 Watchtower guitar players.
He could and that story that I bum rushed in on him, that I hijacked him on, he didn't really recall the full scope of how I remember it, because it was in 1986. But the point is that he knows Watchtower. He talked about it for a second, and he said he would have done that. He would have done that. He said, I would have done it. And I stopped me for a second. I was like, wait, what?
He basically said he would have joined Watchtower if you extended.
He did. It's on tape.
Yeah.
And I just now got to realize that he said that because we were at work, air quotes.
Yeah.
So I love this interview because I had heard all these great things about Marty. He's super mellow and super aware, as I said. And I learned a lot. I think everybody's going to learn a lot. I did want to throw in here, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, I guess, but it's okay. We're talking about Drama, Marty Friedman's new record, which you can get now.
Available now, yes.
And I was going to say, he's doing a tour
Mhm.
And he did mention that live he's doing career retrospect at his shows. It's not just going to be cross-leg on a hippie rug playing this ethereal mind trip of a from his new record. He's putting on a show. It sounds like he sort of got excited, and you'll see him when he talks about his show that he's doing on this tour coming up later this year and on into next year. He's
Yeah.
doing a retrospective of his career, which is really cool.
And injecting a lot of Japanese influence, according
Correct.
to him.
Correct.
So he's going to bring a lot of the culture that he's embraced as a resident of Japan for 20 some years now. I think some of his backing musicians are Japanese, and so all of that is part of the show. And I think it's going to all add up to a really interesting experience. We should mention that tour, which, by the way, starts in 2025.
Oh,
The
okay.
opening act. The opening act is Texas' own Patrick Kennison and Nikki Stringfield,
Yeah.
friends of ours from way back. And
Shall I say
Patrick-
husband and wife?
husband and wife, yeah. Patrick,
It's a family band.
Patrick, as the guitarist in Lita Ford's band, and Nikki is in the Iron Maidens, and she's also got a
Solo.
couple
Yep.
solo albums out.
Solo.
Yeah,
Well, so is Patrick. Patrick's a solo artist, as well as they're both in Heaven Below.
yeah.
Yeah.
So really happy for them to have
Yeah,
this
that's
tour experience, because I think them paired with Marty Friedman is going to be a really interesting musical experience. I also wanted to say real quick that Marty, of course, everyone listening and watching is fully aware of his contributions to Megadeth.
Oh, yeah.
And we talked a little bit about that, but he hinted at the fact that a lot of that story is going to be told in his autobiography that comes out. The physical copy comes out in December of this year. You can pre-order it now.
DreamingJapanese.com.
Dreaming Japanese, yeah.
Dreaming Japanese,
DreamingJapanese.com
yeah. Mhm.
is where you can find it. But it was really interesting because I started in with a question about Megadeth, and he basically corrected me. And I appreciated that, but
He
was
was
very
about to
interesting.
answer. He was about to answer, and he said, "You know what? Read it in the book."
Yes. So my point to all of you out there is what you think you know about Marty's time in Megadeth and what's been reported on the internet and what you may have read may not be the full story. And
But we still got an hour interview with Marty effing Friedman today.
Yeah.
We still got an hour out of him, even though we didn't get him to go deep on Megadeth stuff.
And I didn't really want to go deep on Megadeth. I mean, I think a lot of it, well, I say a lot of it's been reported, but apparently it hasn't been reported accurately. So that's what the book is for. But my motivation for having him on the show is I've been listening to this drama record that he just put out, and it's really, really good. So I've never had the chance to interview Marty before. I've, much like you, heard that he's a really chill guy.
Yeah, he's friends with a lot of people that I may or may not be close with, like Danko Jones. He's buddies with Danko Jones.
And he loves the Ramones.
Yeah, his favorite band is the
That
Ramones.
surprised me. That really surprised me.
I think I knew that, and it's not something that I walk around in my pocket with,
Yeah,
But I think I knew that.
I was surprised.
That
So-
makes him even cooler than he was an hour ago.
Exactly. Exactly.
Take us out, Dave.
So yeah, a lot going on with Marty Friedman. His new album is called Drama. It's out now. His autobiography is called Dreaming Japanese. It's available for pre-order at dreamingjapanese.com. Comes out physically in December, and he's got an upcoming tour in 2025. Happy to have him today, Marty Friedman, on the Talk Louder podcast. Hey,
There he is.
Hey, what's going on?
how
you
are you,
doing?
man?
How you doing? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Thanks for joining us all the way from Japan.
All right, where am I talking to you guys at?
We're in Texas.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We're in
What time is it
Austin,
there in Japan?
Austin, Texas. Yeah, it's 8 here.
It's 10 in the morning.
Okay.
It's tomorrow.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
So
The
you're in the
already,
future. Thank you for
I
joining us
sure am.
from the future.
Awesome, brother.
You've always been
Nice to meet you guys.
kind of from the future, though, too, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, your guitar playing, your progressive guitar playing. I've been a fan for a long, long, long time with the Metal
Thank you.
Massacre stuff and
Oh, geez.
maybe Shrapnel stuff, and then I love the Hawaii stuff. One Nation
my God.
Underground.
Thank you.
What's
Very
the
crazy.
blue EP? Wild, crazy and loud, or so what was that?
That's close enough. That's close
Yeah,
enough. Loud,
You know,
loud,
y-
and heavy.
yeah, loud, wild, and heavy. I wore that thing out, me and my friends. Anyway,
I guess you could. I appreciate that, man. That's
yeah,
great.
of course.
Yeah, yeah. So you've been in Japan for 2003, since 2003. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I want to get to your album, and I know we've only got a short time tonight, but you're like a celebrity over there. I mean, you've been in hundreds of TV shows and you played all the big arenas and venues. What was it about the Japanese culture that appealed to you, and how did you get into the TV business?
Well, I came over here because there was a period of time where I was just really, really hooked on Japanese music. And I knew that that's where I wanted to make music. I wanted to play music here. And so when I came here, I kind of got right into that. And pretty much right away, I got an offer to do a TV show, and I didn't want to do it. It was a TV show about heavy metal. It was like a kind of a comedy variety show, music show, and I'm like, if this thing sucks, people are going to think that Marty went to Japan to make fun of heavy metal, and I was really kind of worried about that, so I almost turned it down. But they said, look, just try it once, try this one program that we have, and they were just planning a pilot, and they'd written it just for me because they knew that I'd come to Japan and I was fluent in Japanese, and I knew a lot about Japanese music. At the same time, I knew about heavy metal. I had a history in metal. So they wrote this for me just in the hopes that I would agree to do it. So I thought that was very nice, but didn't want to make an ass out of myself at the same time. But did it, and it went incredibly well. And immediately from there, I got a new management, which was one of the top television production companies of the country. And suddenly that program kind of took off. And then from that, I got to do a lot of things like commercials and other non-musical shows and just tons of other stuff that I never would have dreamed of doing. That just one thing leads to another. Even just yesterday, I did a part in a movie. It's going to be a big movie here because it was a massive manga. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like comics, and it was so popular they made a movie of it, and
A live
so
action.
I've done things that are just way off of the beaten path of what I intended to do.
Yeah.
But it kind of allowed me to do what I want to do the way I want to do it without worrying about, you know, budgets or having to do something because the record label wants you to do it this way or that way. So it's been lucky, very lucky.
Wow.
That's
That's
awesome.
incredible, man. That's really
Yeah.
cool that you get to explore all those creative outlets and as you said, kind of do it on your terms. Well, congratulations to all that. That's a whole nother side of your success. So that's pretty amazing.
That's also you still have time, or probably get asked more. I don't know if you're the kind of guy that says yes to everything. It doesn't really sound like you would say yes to everything. We don't really know each other, but you do show up every once in a while and guest on someone's record. I see that time and again with you. Once with me, there is a Howling Sycamore record that I sing on that you played a solo on the ballad.
Dude, that's rad. Did you sing on that?
Yeah, the second Howling Sycamore record, that's me, and you played solos on the ballad. That's a project of
Wow.
David Tissot. Yeah. And you also, while we're at it, you also had Ron Jarzombek from Watchtower on tour with you.
Yes, yes.
And then in
Yeah.
1980
Wow.
in 1986, I was really hoping for you to replace Billy White in Watchtower, and it just didn't happen.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Had you asked, I might have done it.
Yeah, I heard that there was a gig in we were in San Francisco. We were at the Mabuhay Gardens, and I was told that you were going to be in the audience, and I was looking for you after our set, and I couldn't find you. So
Uh, I don't know if I was there, but I
yeah.
remember hearing your guys' demos and
Oh wow.
maybe the albums. Yeah, oh, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, there's something from kind of back in that era. I had a band called Cacophony,
Oh yeah, with
and we had a
Jason.
song,
Yeah, yeah,
Jason Becker, and we
yeah,
had a song called Go Off. And that was a direct rip-off of either Watchtower or something Ron was doing. The
yeah.
intro to that, we heard Mike Varney's house, and immediately Jason and I went, and Jason came up, figured out how Ron did it, and he did his own version of it, and we kind of did it together. So we blatantly ripped off Ron doing that stuff because, as you know, he's just such a master of unique guitarisms that there's no way we're going to hear that and not try to do something with it.
Yeah, it's kind
Yeah,
of
what a monster.
safe to say no one plays like Ron. So
Yeah, yeah,
he's
it's impossible.
incredible. Yeah, he's a Texas gem. He's a hidden gem. Him and his brother Bobby are just incredibly humble and wonderful. I don't you know this already. Anyway, those are rubbing elbows, but I'm extremely proud of that song that you played solos on, that Howling Sycamore. It was a pleasure when I heard the track with your solo on it before I cut the vocal. I was just like, oh my God. It kind of set the tone for my vocal for that song. So just wanted to say that's just me fanboying out a little bit on you. Sorry.
I'm glad because I remember that song and it totally kills. I remember doing it. I remember, wow, this is a really cool thing. I like to do projects. If I think the thing sounds good, I'll jump in and play on it. If I like it,
Well,
I just love playing.
David Tissot is, man, he masterminded those records. That material is fantastic. He wrote those lyrics. I think his wife Karen wrote most of those lyrics, them together. And yeah, I love it.
Really, really cool stuff.
It was a joy. Anyway,
Let's get to drama.
yes.
Your latest album, it's currently out, and I was listening to it, and I got a confession, man. I am not much of an instrumental album kind of guy, but this thing has such a calming, soothing sort of nature to it, and the flow of it is just really works to my ears. I found it to be just a very pleasant listening experience. And I get a little nervous when a guy like Marty Friedman puts out an instrumental album because I'm worried that it's going to be a shredder album. And this is not at all a shredder album. It's obviously very well executed guitar playing, but it's not a shred fest. There's a lot of emotion and tones and that sort of thing in there. How would you compare and contrast it to some of your previous solo albums?
Well, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. I think I know exactly how you feel because I'm not a big listener of guitar in the first place, especially like what you might call shredding.
Yeah.
I'm not. That's a big. It's not something I would want to really listen to. Um, but like you said, the guitar work is definitely. There's a lot of care going into the guitar work and all of the work and the arrangements and all that stuff. And I think the closest to comparison to any of my albums would be Scenes, an album I did a while back, which is it's quiet. It's quiet. It's romantic. It's orchestral, but dramatic, and hopefully, bring tears out, evoke tears, and
Yes.
maybe some chills, and just moments for listening moments. And it's definitely not like a showcase of how ripping someone can play on guitar. I
Right.
think I covered that like back in the Hawaii days, what Jason was talking about. Once I
You,
got that off my chest,
you
I was
sure
able
did.
to like start making music.
Yeah, where you had
But
you
yeah, I
let's
mean,
see, you called up Mickey Mouse to do vocals, and I'm gonna shred with while Mickey Mouse is screaming. So yeah.
well, this is funny because I have a book, an autobiography that's done, and it comes out in December. And I wrote in great details all of the thought processes going on during that time.
Oh, cool.
And I was so young back then, and metal was like very new. And the combination of that is like when you're a kid and you see somebody do something that you think is difficult, you don't question whether it sounds cool or if it's anything's good about it. You just think, is this hard to do? Is this easy to do? If it's hard to do, fuck yeah, it's cool. So I was at that time, it was like if a guy has a high voice, it's the pinnacle of being cool. Well, why not? I mean, Rob Halford has a high voice, and he's God. So that immediately just wipes the board, saying, if a guy has a high voice, I want this guy in the band. And so that was the thought process during Hawaii, and it was really kind of a shame because that stuff is like you said. It sounds like Mickey Mouse now. At the time, I mean, the singer was actually very talented. But at the time, I was like, dude, sing higher, sing higher, sing higher. The dude was talented. He would, if there was a good producer in there, he might have said, look, use your range a little bit
Sure.
more, make a melody that people can relate to rather than just fucking shrilling the whole time. So these are the things that happen like when you're 18, 19 and the genre is new and you think you're doing something new and you're just all gung-ho about everything. But that type of story, those type of stories are in the autobiography. And it
I
was
must
really
have
kind of
that.
fun
I got to get that.
to
That
go back
sounds
and listen to that stuff.
yeah.
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 Well, it's really fun to I mean, I find myself thinking of those early days and being complete, I'm a romantic when it comes to that. That's why I keep bringing that thing up. But where you are with your current solo record, that's where I am as a human being, and music with emotional value is way more important to me than how tight my pants are or how high I can sing or whatever or how much leather gear I can put on for tomorrow's gig. Because where you are in that moment when you explain what you're talking about in your book back when you were a kid, we are all that, right? And that's why I want to read that. I want to feel that through your words, because I live for that. But it's more, like I said, it's important for music to have emotional value, period. If you're a kid, whatever your emotional value is, then it's probably going to be, I want off the chain horror, and that's what you seek. And I think that growing up for all of us has been great. And maybe it's not so great growing up for others, and that's why they choose to kind of live back there. But it's important. I'm extremely happy that you are a progressive musician and that you care about what it is that you're doing. And there's no quick buck anymore. There's no you mentioned moving to Japan for for your career and your love for Japanese music, and and you, it shows, and you're successful
Yeah.
because of what you've been attracted to apparently the entire time. So congratulations on the new record.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much. You make some great points. I mean, I think one thing that the reason why you guys are doing this and the reason why I'm doing this is because we never really lose that first spark, that life force that got us into music.
Right.
So it's not like you forgot what you did when you started. I mean, we all know how fucking hard it is to be in the music business at all. So there's got to be some kind of insanity in your body to make you want to keep doing it and keep growing it and that starts when you're really young. So you have to embrace that and keep as much as that as you possibly can, because that's what's going to keep you doing it when you get older. And I really talk a lot about that so people can realize what goes into not only people like me, well, especially me because it's my book, but a lot of people, I call them lifers in the music business. It's that life force from when they first saw all those same posters that are on your wall right there. That's my bedroom right there.
Yeah.
You know, that's there's something in there that just hooks you at a young age, and then you're done. You're done. You know what you're doing. You don't know exactly where you're going to fit in this music business over the years, but there's something in that formative 14, 15, 16-year-old self that is strong enough to sustain you throughout your whole life. And sometimes when you can revisit that in your current formation, it's really, really happiness, because you look back and you're like, well, this is what I kind of saw myself doing back then. And so, yeah, it's important to acknowledge that period of time. And usually I don't talk about it much, but in the course of writing the book, I had to really dig deep into those things. And it was kind of really fun to expose that. Maybe a little embarrassing at points, but kind of fun.
You two of the songs on the new album have vocals, and so I wanted to ask you, when you're putting an album like this together, were those songs written with vocals in mind, or did something about the song speak to you after the fact that said these songs need vocals, they lend themselves well to vocals? Did you go into it thinking they were going to have vocals, or is that sort of an afterthought because the song called for it and for some reason?
No, I had the song. I had the song actually for a long time. And I loved the song. It was actually written in Japanese for a project that, as many projects do, you get signed and you release a couple singles, and that's the end of it. For every successful project that you hear about, there's like 20 projects that completely tanked for whatever reason. And I found it fun talking about those projects that tanked in the book as well. It's actually more fun to read about that stuff than the successes. But this project, starts off and everybody's all, wow, this is great. And you release a couple things and nothing happens. But we did this one song, always loved the song, and always wanted to put it somewhere. But this drama album was supposed to be instrumental, but the vibe of that song fit on the album so well that I'm like, I'm going to put a vocal song on this album. And I'm not going to do it in Japanese. I want everyone in the world to be able to understand it. So we got a great singer, Chris Brooks from Like a Storm, to do English lyrics and to sing the song and to do a music video. And he was just wonderful. And it was just, it was a love party. We just loved doing it. And one of my favorite songs that I've ever done came out of it.
I think it's one of my favorites on the album. So when you do an album like this, it's been said that, a composer, I consider you a composer. When a composer puts together an instrumental album, you go into it realizing or knowing that you're not doing this necessarily for commercial appeal. You're doing it for your inner artistic satisfaction. But you also don't play and live in a vacuum. You do want people to hear this. So how do you strike the balance between satisfying your artistic integrity, but also still managing to connect with an audience that may not have the ears that you have?
This is a great question, and this is something that I'm very fortunate that I don't really have to um, dig into so deeply because, like I said, I do so many other things here in Japan that have allowed me to kind of just, when it comes to releasing a record, I just do whatever I want. I don't care if it's a major label puts it out or an indies label puts it out. I've had both, and they, with varying results. Some have been better than others as far as results go, but I've always been completely in control of the content. Now, the only place where I do sort of what's like a compromise, because as you said, you don't live in a vacuum and you want people to enjoy it, is I try to really make an album be an album that's consistent to itself. You know what I mean? What happens with a lot of people, especially in the world of instrumental music, which I don't really want to necessarily be put into, is guys, they have a lot of talent, but they make records that sound like a resume. You know, here's my up-tempo song, here's my shuffle, here's the romantic ballad, here's the classical influence song, here's my one token metal track. This is just horrible. But like people want to do that because they want to show they can do all these things, but this is only good if you're trying to get a gig in some band that's one of those things you're trying to do. As far as a listener goes, it's not very friendly. It's not very nice to a listener to do that. Um, I try to keep the albums in one concept. So if I'm like writing an album like Drama, for example, and suddenly I come up with something that's full on metal, this I just love it. Let's put it on there. No, dude, you can't put it on there. I put one song on Drama that's kind of a metal track on there, and I did it for the reason of contrast. Because without that, it would have been completely all ballads all the way. So I wanted one spot where you could kind of contrast it and make the ballads sound more balladier and make this one track kind of have its own identity. But that's it. The rest of it is very much it's a one stop kind of deal. It's the whole album feels like the same album.
It's a
And as a young
cohesive,
kid, that was very hard to do.
yeah, it's a cohesive listening experience. And I think that's what I was trying to say earlier in the conversation. That's why it's so pleasing to my ear, even though I don't often listen to instrumental records, especially by guitarists, because as much as I love Yngwie Malmsteen and Joe Satriani and those guys, I sometimes find that those records to be kind of jarring because they're technically brilliant. Don't get me wrong, but from a listening perspective, you know, we here in Austin we have Eric Johnson, and I kind of equate your Drama album with something that maybe Eric Johnson would do, where it's like instrumental, but it's pleasing to the ear. It takes you on a journey. I don't know if I'm articulating this very well, but it's not just this noodle fest, shred, attack, attack, attack. It's kind of it's got a flow and it's pleasing to the ear.
Well, it's a very kind thing to say, and I totally get it. I totally appreciate it. Um, and it's probably because I really don't listen to a lot of other guys for the same reason that you say. And a lot of guys are just so good that if I listen to them, I'm just going to get bummed out anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This happened with Ron. If I listen to Ron's guitar playing, I'm like, why do I even bother playing now? Because you know, guys are so good. And to be honest, it's not the kind of music that I listen to. I listen to pop music. I listen to soundtrack music. I listen to very current music in Japan a lot. So hearing a guy who can play really great is really not gonna come under my radar so much because there's so many great players, and it's just not my listening choice. So like when you listen to my record, you're not really hearing, okay, well, he's a combination between this good player and this good player and this good player. It's kind of more just like my own personal life experiences rather than a combination of all of my quote unquote guitar influences, really.
Yeah. Am I correct? We only have about 5 minutes left. Do you have someone after us?
The next one I have is at 11. So,
Oh, so
is it,
so we're good for a
yeah,
couple
we can
more.
go a little bit more if you like. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, I'd
Excellent.
love to. So you mentioned the one song that you have on the album as contrast. That song is Thrill Ride, and it is the one that's kind of a little bit more metallic, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Oh yeah, Thrill City. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And obviously you're known for your work in Megadeth. And so is there any appeal to you at some point in the does being in a full-time thrash metal band hold any appeal to you anymore, or have you kind of been there, done that, and you're over it? I think people want to know if we're going to see Marty Friedman in sort of that thrash metal context again.
I don't know, man. I never say never to anything. It's definitely not on the top of my to-do list. But yeah, who knows? I mean, I don't really see myself going back into a nostalgic type of musical genre. However, anything is possible. I mean, I'm doing my own projects. I'm in other projects here in Japan as well. And anything is possible. But
Are
it's
you?
not, I'm not really big into like going back into something I've already done.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
there's
I get that.
But new things happen and new things contain parts of older things, and you just never know. But yeah.
You were your period, your era with Megadeth is probably the most prolific and certainly the most popular and successful. I mean, it was you had a heck of a run with the band, and I know that when you joined for Rust in Peace, uh, there really wasn't much room for you to contribute to the songwriting, but that changed with every subsequent album. You had more and more influence on each of the albums from a songwriting perspective.
That's not true. Oh, that's not
No?
true right there.
Okay,
No,
set the
that's not
record straight.
true. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the record is set completely straight in my book
Okay.
about the songwriting process. But I'll just tell you that it was not as you say. When I joined the band, there was like a couple songs done for Rust in Peace, maybe 3 songs um, that were the song structures were done and written, and the rest of it was done completely as a band unit. And I went into great detail on this, and yeah, rather than saying it now, I just rather you read it because it's very clearly articulated, and
That's fine.
there's no
Okay.
nothing
When
that
is
can
your
be
book going to be
misconstrued.
available?
In the
It's available now for pre-order. It comes out in December.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you go to dreamingjapanesebook.com, you can get it now, or at amazon.com. It's already available for pre-order. And there's a lot of specials, like special editions and autographs and
Okay.
all that type of stuff. But
And what's the
yeah, all
title?
that mega
What's the title of the book? I'm so
the
sorry.
title is called Dreaming Japanese.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I think there's a lot of unanswered Megadeth questions, and there's a lot of unanswered Hawaii questions and Cacophony questions.
Cool.
Not too many people ask the Hawaii questions, though.
Right.
They're all answered in there because I think it's important in a book like this to really expose everything about the person who, whatever era of my career someone might be interested in. I think it's important to know everything that got you to that point. So there's like all the details of my first band, Deuce, and
Yeah.
then the Hawaii and Vixen and all that stuff, and Cacophony, and of course Megadeth. I think people are going to be really genuinely surprised at the clarity of detail in the Megadeth times, because it's not something that I've talked about since I left the band.
Mm.
And the stuff that I did talk about while I was in the band was very much kind of promotional, talking about the guitar parts and
Mm.
talking about we're touring this part of the world now. It was very, promotional interviews and stuff like that, but very rarely, if ever, probably never on a personal level at all. So I think people are going to enjoy reading that. And then, of course, everything that happened after that, everything, because my life is just in a complete 180 after that, and all the Japanese stuff. I think it's going to open a lot of people's eyes. But like, back to Megadeth, I think people they're going to really enjoy it. I think it's going to be a very pleasant read for them, because they're going to like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know this. And just a lot of things that don't get talked about and that I really never had an opportunity to bring to light, and a lot of good things and
Well,
a lot of
you've always been a little bit of a mystery to me, and I mean, as a fan, I didn't know a whole lot about you, but I sure have enjoyed your work throughout your entire career. So I know
thank you
that.
very much.
And so
Thank you very much.
for the most part, I think the book will be a pleasant eye opener to your life and times that
Yeah, but
you haven't talked about, and I'm looking forward to checking that out.
yeah, I mean, the reason I sort of framed the question the way I did is because I think most people, if you go out on the internet, which I'm guilty of, and that's what most people do, you kind of get one representation of that era of Megadeth. And I think what Marty's saying is you can't always believe what you read on the internet, and he's going to tell his side of the story in this book. And I'm really intrigued now because I want to hear his side of the story, and we won't make you blurt it out all right here because we want people to read the book. But that's very, very interesting that you offered that contrasting perspective, because I hope at the very least you're very proud of all that time with Megadeth, because you gave us some incredible music, and whatever the drama may be, or the conflict or friction or whatever you want to call it, and between you and Mustaine or whoever, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I hope it didn't sour the experience to such a degree that you can't look back on that time in your life and be proud of all the great music you gave us as fans and listeners.
Well, absolutely. I think you're going to be very, very pleasantly, I don't know about surprised, but I'm incredibly proud of all of that time in Megadeth, what we did, what Megadeth did for my career. It was absolutely my first step into the real world of the music business, and how incredibly grateful I am for that opportunity. I think
Sure.
there's absolutely no sourness
Mm.
related to Megadeth at all.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
absolutely no negative feelings and none of that. So there's no like kind of bashing, there's no negativity. There's just truth. There's just all the things are exactly from my eyes, how it happened, how I wrote it. I was completely clean and sober the entire time I was in the band. Um, I didn't even drink a beer. When I was in like 14, 15, and 16, I was a maniac. I lived like 3 lifetimes of doing all the drugs, all the drinking, all the partying, all the rock star shit in my first band, Deuce. I did so much of that. And there was something that made me just stop cold turkey right there, which is a long story, which I got into. But by the time I was in Megadeth, I was like straight edge way before straight edge was even a term. So I remember all that stuff with clarity and great appreciation. So, like you said, people read things on the internet, and I would hate for people to think that I have any negative feelings towards that era, because it's absolutely not true. Um, some of my favorite music that I've made in my career was done in that period of time. So I really enjoyed outlining exactly the process how all that music got created, how it got made, how it got put down to tape. And it was a definite process, and it was a process that was only um, only Megadeth did this one process, and all the projects and bands and artists I've worked with and all the albums I've made on my own before and since, Megadeth had a unique process of making music, and I got into great detail of what that meant to me and how it worked for me and all that stuff. So you don't have to worry about feeling bad about music that you love, because I'm equally as proud of it. And I know how you feel, because sometimes, like if I like a piece of music, I'm kind of afraid to find out what the artist thought about making that music, because you're afraid they're going to say like, I didn't like it, or this sucked, or I wish I didn't do that. And then that kind of shoots down something in you, because as far as I'm concerned, the music I like, that's mine. I like a piece of music, that's mine now. I like it. So I don't really want to know, I'm a huge fan of Phil Spector's music. He's like my idol, but he's
Wow.
absolutely an abhorrent human being.
Yeah.
Absolutely worse.
Yeah.
So I don't want to really know about that, because the music is mine. The music is mine.
Yeah.
So I'm really afraid to talk to my heroes. And I remember one time when I was a kid, my friend, one of my great idols, Uli John Roth,
Ooh.
my friend wrote Uli John Roth, and Uli John Roth wrote him back a letter.
Wow.
And he was talking about the songs he liked and didn't like when he was in the Scorpions. And I'm like, oh no, I like this song, but Uli doesn't like it. And it's like, I know as an artist, he wants to be true and say the truth. And I respect that. But I remember feeling, you know what, if anybody asks me about something, I'm going to be careful with how I answer that, because, the fans own the songs now. Once you put them out there, it's theirs, and their memories are connected to them. So I try to be as honest as I can, and thankfully, I don't have regrets related to music that I've released. So if someone says, this particular song means something to me, I can, relate a good story about that, because I'm very fortunate that I've not released much anyway that I wish that I hadn't released. So hopefully you can kind of rest assured on that front.
Yeah.
But there will be a lot of details how things got the way they were. That's for sure.
Awesome. Well, I know that I can't wait to read that book, because I'm a big fan of that period of Megadeth, and knowing now that there is a side to the story that hasn't yet been told makes me all the more interested, especially when it's coming from the man who was there. So,
Marty, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Washington, D.C., right in between Baltimore and Washington.
Okay. And were you living in California were you living in the Bay Area at any time?
Yeah, I lived everywhere, man. I grew up in Washington, moved to Germany as a kid, and then back to Washington, and then to Hawaii. I lived, because my dad's job, I moved in Hawaii and Germany and all that stuff, and then lived in San Francisco, and then I moved to LA, and then later Scottsdale, Arizona. And actually, it's kind of weird to say, but the place that I've lived the longest in one place has been Tokyo.
Wow.
Of my whole life. Yeah.
Wow. Well, you found
you found your place.
Yeah, you just found your place, and it's been a journey. And
well, you know how it is. Like when you're touring a lot, you kind of feel like you feel at home in a lot of different places. When you've been to a city like 4 or 5 or 10 times, and you start to know a way around, you feel like I'm kind of at home here. Like especially like the main cities where you go to a lot, London, Paris, and a lot of cities in Italy and Singapore, and places you've been a lot. I feel kind of like I don't feel not at home, so to speak. You know, I feel like I can adapt. I don't feel so much like an outsider in different places. Maybe that's because I grew up moving a lot, but
Yeah.
yeah, as a touring artist, as you know, that
Yeah.
you kind of feel at home a lot of places.
So here's another question that's probably covered in your book, but what can you tell us about your Ozzy audition? Because
Ah,
I've read parts where you said it was a disaster, but I can't believe that because you're just too talented of a player, especially knowing the type of player that Ozzy would be looking for. Why is it true that you thought it was a disaster? And if so, why?
I don't know if I used that word. I probably didn't, but somebody probably just made a headline like that. It
Okay.
wasn't a disaster. Um, maybe it was a disaster. I mean, the disaster was I just didn't even think that an audition for a band is not just playing the songs. At that time, I was very naive. I just learned the songs, and I learned them very well and then played them. I think they were perfect. It sounded absolutely perfect to me. At that time, I was I lived in San Francisco, so I was doing Cacophony stuff, and that stuff was like, you know, it was like Ron's music. It was just like so full on
Yeah.
difficult. So like learning the Ozzy songs was kind of like playing the Ramones to me. It was really just not anywhere near as like mind bending as what I was doing normally. So I thought I was going to have no problem with the music, but even then I over practiced. I really learned it very, very well, and I knew it backwards and forwards. And so I did the audition. It sounded fantastic to my ears. It sounded, everybody was happy with the sound, but I could just tell that I blew the audition for a completely other reason. And the other reason was I just wasn't the same kind of dude as those other guys were. I mean, the bass player, in the band at the time and the drummer in the band at the time, they were like full on LA Sunset Strip, handcuff bracelets and necklaces and black t-shirts and boots and hats and they were
Cologne.
just like full on decked out LA metal dudes. And I was just a guitar nerd with a regular t-shirt and a pair of jeans. And I know that's what did it. I had nothing in common with those guys. We didn't talk. We played like 4 or 5 songs. I thought, fucking killer. We sound great. We sound like a band. It gelled. It sounded musically. It was fucking awesome. I think. I mean, you know, I played everything exactly like the record, as far as I was concerned, and but you could just tell in the air in the room. It wasn't like, dude, let's party, or dude, what do you think about this? Oh yeah, I used to like the Dead Boys, or we used to be into Generation X or whatever. There was none of that. We just played the songs, and it was like those guys were like, can we get this over with? And I want to go out getting drunk on the strip or something. And I was just a really clean cut guitar nerd, dude. And as it turns out, they got Zakk Wylde, who is 1,000 times better for the job than I would have been.
Mm,
So, you know, from that, you learn that a band audition is not about the playing. If I was really clever, I might have done a little bit more research on who was in the band, what they were like, what, how I could have appealed to them on a personal, you know, personal level. That goes a long way. If I would have learned a little bit about, for example, the influences of the drummers, you know, I didn't know anything. I didn't even know those guys' names.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
could have gone, there was no internet, but I could have like tried to figure out how, you know, what's the influence of the drummer, and like maybe warmed up on one of his favorite songs or something and just done some little thing to get these guys on my side rather than just music, play the music. If you nail the music, you'll get the gig. That's so far from the truth
Right.
in real life, as you guys all know, that if you can play, that's like maybe 30% of it. Everybody can play, you know, anyone can play stuff. Now you got to be someone that the guys want to hang out with, and someone that looks like you're in the same group and I didn't look like those guys. I didn't talk like those guys. And, you know, I was just very naive. And so I
Yeah,
went into way more deep.
we've had that
So if you
conversation
were,
on the show. A lot
yeah,
comes down to personality and chemistry.
if you would have been,
Yeah.
if you would have been like, you know, like you were said, party animal 15, 16, 17, maybe you would have got the gig.
Yeah, if you auditioned when you were in
Uh,
Deuce.
if I would audition when I was in Deuce, I would have got the gig. I'm pretty sure because
Hey,
I could hang with those big party guys back
It
at that
just
time.
just
yeah, yeah.
wasn't your time. They weren't ready for you, is what it was. They
Hey,
weren't ready for you.
They did great. They did great. When I saw Zakk, coincidentally, Zakk had my exact same guitar tech
Wow.
when he got the gig. He got a guitar tech that I worked with before that. So he invited me to the show, and I'm like, dude,
Cool.
Zakk is like 1,000 times better for me, for the gig than I was. So I realized, you know, there's a gig for me somewhere. It's just not this gig.
Sure.
Zakk was the guy for that gig, and he just killed it. So it wasn't like I was bummed out that someone else got the gig. It's like when Zakk got it, I realized why I didn't get the gig, and it all made sense. It's all a learning. It's a learning curve, man. It's just so much goes into a gig.
Oh yeah.
Did
Was
I- did I-
Was Mike Inez the bass player at that? Mike and was Mike
No, it was Bill
Bill
Suzanne.
Susan.
Bill
Yeah,
Suzanne. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
was
probably
the
Randy
drummer
Castillo.
Randy Castillo? That's
Right.
right.
It was
That's
Randy
right.
Castillo on
Yeah.
drums.
Far
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, yeah.
Good players. Just
Oh, yeah.
they wear a cologne and shit, and you don't.
Well, they definitely are the LA party dudes that Marty described.
Right,
yeah.
right. That's what I meant.
So, Marty, did I read somewhere? I'm a huge Ramones fan. Did I read somewhere that you got on stage with CJ Ramone when he came to Japan and you did California Sun with him?
Oh yes, you rock, brother. Ramones, man, the Ramones are like my reason for existence.
Yeah.
Love the Ramones. Anything related to the Ramones, if I get the call, I'm doing it. I've done a
Nice.
couple Ramones cover bands a long time ago. I would love to do that again. One time I put together this little thing. We did the It's Alive album from top to bottom, literally exactly like the record, including the talk between the songs.
Oh, nice.
I just love that stuff.
Man,
and when CJ came to
that's
Japan,
super nerdy though. I love that. That you just nerded out
Oh,
on that.
So CJ comes to
dude.
Japan, and what happened? How did you guys pair?
I'm the king of the nerds, man.
Love it.
One of my dear friends in Japan runs the Ramones fan club, the Ramones Japanese fan club. It's a girl named Yuki, and not only that, she's a very well-known photographer in Japan. So one time, she was taking pictures of something I was doing, started talking about Ramones, and we became fast friends, of course. And then anytime any Ramones thing would happen in Japan, she would be all over it, in the center of it. And she's like, CJ's coming. Do you want to jam? I'm like, dude, where do I sign up? And I went over there and jammed with him. He had Daniel Ray, who produced a bunch of the later Ramones albums, on guitar.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit upset, not upset, but a little bit let down that when this Daniel Ray guy was playing the songs with CJ, he was not doing all downstrokes.
Oh shit.
And he was like doing up and down like any other guitar player. I'm like, how can a guy who is like so integral to the Ramones world not play those songs with all downstrokes? It was a sacrilege. And
You're
I was
not
a little let down
authentic.
because I really liked the albums he produced. I really liked them a lot.
Yeah.
And I thought he did great work with the band, but I was kind of let down. So I played 3 songs with CJ: California Sun, Commando, and Glad to See You Go.
Oh, nice.
Of course, all downstrokes. And they were on YouTube. And I think somehow they got taken down. And it was such a joy because CJ was so wonderful and just such a great, perfect person for the Ramones, and gave the Ramones like many years more life, and very responsible for the uptick in Ramones fanaticism after the Ramones retired, very much thanks to CJ and the energy he put into the Ramones. So I was honored to play with him, and what a thrill that was.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. He came to Austin for South by Southwest one year with his band Los Gusanos, and I ended up being his tour guide, basically. He drove all over the city in the van with him and helped him set up and tear down a gig and went to an after party, and we had a great time. He's a great guy. So
How cool is that?
one more point, and then we'll let you go because I know you got another one. When you do go out on tour to support Drama, which is going to be in 2025, you're going to be in Austin,
Yes.
which is going to be great. But your opening act is friends of ours, Patrick Kinnison and Nikki Stringfield. That is they're going to be your support on the tour. I was wondering how you know them or how that came about, because I was really happy to see that for them, and I think it's a good fit for you.
Well, I've only heard fantastic things about them. My American manager sent me a link to something that they did, and I looked at it, and I'm like, yeah, great. Sign them up. I don't know them personally, but
They're good people, very good people.
that's exactly what I heard. And my manager is a super judge of character, and when it comes to a tour like this, and you got to live with people for a while, a good character is like kind of on the top of the list, and they seem super cool, and they are doing music that's different from what we do, and I just think it's going to be a really nice night. I think what they're going to sing, and they're playing acoustic stuff, and we are doing a lot of the drama stuff, the very dramatic things, but we're also kind of doing a lot of things from different parts of my career as well, and my
good
solo albums. And my band is going to bring something very, very Japanese to places like Austin, Texas, and New Hampshire, and LA, and Detroit, and all the kind of places where they don't get a lot of Japanese influence. So we're going to pretty much do the exact same show that we do in Japan, but in America. So I think people are going to really see something very, very new, and they're going to get a new energy. They're going to walk away from it with a really, really happy and positive and refreshing kind of energy. And they're not going to be like, wow, that guy's a great guitar player. No, they're not going to think that. They're just going to go, I had such a great time, and Marty's band was just off the charts. They're going to remember my band more than they remember me, I think.
Wow.
There's an art to that. You blend right in with the overall, the audio experience.
Well, much success to the album Drama and to your tour coming up.
And the autobiography.
Yes, and the book. I can't wait for that. We appreciate your time. Very
fantastic. Yeah, Marty, thank you for spending so much time with us. We do appreciate you going long. It's been awesome catching up with you and getting to know you a little bit. As Jason said, safe travels on the road when you go out on tour, continued success with Drama and your upcoming autobiography. Everyone can look for that now as a pre-order. It'll be out later in the fall or early 2025 physically.
December 3rd.
There you go, December 3rd, straight from the man's mouth. Marty, thank you so much. On behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave, along with our special guest today, Marty Friedman, on the Talk Louder podcast.
Thank you, guys.